Hey, FUMC Allen family, Pastor Mary Beth here. So I am just so grateful that Brian Hardesty-Crouch was able to come up with a sermon at 5:30 in the morning on Sunday when he learned that the preacher was down for the count. I worshiped online along with lots of you on Sunday morning and was so blessed by his teaching about prayer, which is such an important part of the story of that great escape from Herod's prison. I was really intrigued by how the church is praying for Peter in that story. My translation that I was working from says pray fervently, but other translations say earnestly. And so last week I did a little word study on that, and here's part of what I learned. The Greek word comes from a verb which means to stretch out the hand. So it means to be stretched out, prayer that's stretched out. It conveys the idea of praying fervently without ceasing and not relaxing in effort. It's a continuous prayer of straining and stretching to gain the answer. That's how the church was praying when Peter knocked on the gate. You know, the next part of that story is that Peter's not safe there in the streets. He's got to go someplace where he's going to be safe. And so he goes to Mary's house. We don't know which Mary that is. What we know is that at Mary's house, that's where they're praying. And what we learn in the next part of the story is that there's a slave girl named Rhoda who hears Peter knocking on the gate, and she goes to see who it is. And when she hears Peter's voice, she is so excited that she runs back into the house, leaving Peter knocking on the gate to where everybody's praying to let them know what's going on. And this is a really comical kind of story. You got to read it, check it out, because what I imagine is that she runs into the room and says, Peter's at the door, Peter's at the door, and everybody goes, oh, shh, we're praying. We're praying for Peter. Shh. And she said, no, really, he's at the door. No, shh, we're praying. We're praying for Peter. I wonder what they expected. Did they expect their prayers to make any difference? What do we expect when we pray? You know, the great 20th century theologian Karl Barth said this about prayer. To clasp the hands in prayer is the beginning of an uprising against the disorder of this world. You know, there was just such an uprising in October of 1989 in Eastern Germany. Really, it began much earlier than that. It began in 1980 in the church, the St. Nikolai Church in Leipzig, East Germany. There was a group of young people there who were concerned about the disorder of the world, concerned about the environment, concerned about nuclear proliferation, concerned about communism and its effect on people and their lives. And they began coming together on Monday nights to pray together. It's a small group of young people at that time. But it began to grow very slowly but surely, so that by sometime in 1988, as many as 600 people would gather in the sanctuary of the Church of St. Nikolai in Leipzig to pray for peace. It was Monday night prayer time for peace. That swelled. By September of that year, 4,000 people were regularly gathering in churches in central Leipzig to pray for peace. And then they would march through the streets in Leipzig calling for change. You can imagine that that caught the attention of the government, and they began to make threats against this, promising arrests and beatings and response with violence. And so the hospitals began to be ready. It was on October the 8th. It's estimated that 6,000 to 8,000 people were gathered in churches in central Leipzig, and as many as 70,000 were in the streets. And after the prayer time, they began to march through the streets, and every single person was given a candle to carry in both hands, because you got to carry the candle with both hands to keep it from going out. And that will keep you from picking up a rock to throw at the authorities. And the most miraculous thing happened. There was no response, no arrests, no violence, no beatings. Someone said later on that the authorities were ready for anything except candles and peace. It was exactly 4 weeks later that the Berlin Wall came down and everything began to change in the whole of Eastern Europe. Most historians point to the march in Leipzig on October 8th as the tipping point in the fall of communism. What do we expect to happen when we pray? Our world seems so disordered right now. And I want to invite you to begin to join me in prayer on Monday nights to pray for peace. I'm going to be here in the chapel on Monday night at 6:30. I invite you to come and join me, or invite you to be praying wherever you are at 6:30 on Monday night. But if we're here, if you come and join me in the chapel, I want to tell you we're going to pray for our world. We're going to pray for all those places that have been so impacted by terrible destruction and war and weather events. We're going to pray for the pandemic and pray for our healthcare workers and our teachers and our school administrators and our governmental leaders. And we're going to pray for peace. Monday night at 6:30. We're going to join our hands together, remembering that to clasp the hands together in prayer is the beginning of an uprising against the disorder of this world. I hope you'll come and be a part of it. I'm praying for you. I hope you're praying for me. Shalom.